The Growing Destinations podcast is brought to you by Experience Rochester. Learn more about Minnesota's third largest city, which is home to Mayo Clinic and features wonderful recreational and entertainment opportunities by visiting experiencerochestermn.com.
As much as I would love to tell everybody that every auctioneer is on the same footing, the reality is it's based on your effort. You have to work hard.
Welcome to the Growing Destinations podcast, where we take a deep dive into destination development and focus on a wide range of topics, from tourism and entertainment to economic development and entrepreneurism, and much more. I'm your host, Bill Von Bank. We're on location in Des Moines, Iowa, at the Worldwide College of Auctioneering School. And I'm really excited to welcome one of the true legends in the auction world, Mike Jones. Mike's a Hall of Fame auctioneer, educator, and owner of America's Auction Academy, and co-owner of the Worldwide College of Auctioneering, where I just completed my auctioneer training. Over the course of his career, he's done it all. He won the International Auctioneer Championship in 1998 and went on to serve as president of the National Auctioneers Association in 2004 and 2005. Through his leadership, mentorship, and passion for the craft, Mike has helped shape the future of auctioneering, both on the auction block and in the classroom. Mike Jones, welcome to the Growing Destinations podcast.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm very honored to be on your show.
Well, you've had an extraordinary career in the auction industry. For those who might not know your story, how did you first get your start as an auctioneer?
You know, as a young man, just as a youngster, I grew up on a farm in North Texas, and we were always going to the cattle sales. And the world champion livestock auctioneer actually owned our local sale barn. So I was introduced to good auctioneers or great auctioneers very early on. My parents went to a lot of estate auctions and farm sales, and then they got into collecting antiques, and so they were always going to antique auctions, and that they would drag me along, and I got to buying and selling stuff. And then in time, I ended up in Houston, Texas, and went to work for an auction house, an auction gallery, which was a very prestigious company, and worked there for a couple of years, my final years of high school, and then went off to college. But every weekend or so, I'd come back and work for the auction house. And so after my first year of college, I decided I would go to auction school because I thought that would be very intriguing, and I knew a lot about it. And started my own auction company in January of 1979, and then started having auctions, and that my first sale was in April of 79, and then I really never slowed down after that.
Was there a defining moment for you that you knew this was your career path for life?
I had other things I enjoyed doing because I was in radio, and I really enjoyed radio. I thought I might have a future in that, and I did that for several years, but I was in the auction business the whole time. And so it actually helped promote my auction in my auction company. And I would talk to the crowd, and I'd say, hey, this is Mike Jones. Not talking to you as a disc jockey, but I'm talking to you as an auctioneer. Next thing you know, I'm getting more phone calls to become an auctioneer. And it just seemed automatic. I tell you what happened is I nailed down a relationship with Western Auto Store, which is now called Advanced Automotive. And Western Auto was out of Kansas City. I had gone to auction school in Kansas City, so I had a lot of connections there. And I ended up selling about 300 or 400 Western Auto stores. And when I got that gig, I was selling a Western Auto store somewhere in the United States every week for 20 years.
Oh my gosh.
Well, and then that led to other things like Montgomery Ward. We sold all the Montgomery Ward stores, and then continued to do retail businesses. But once the business started, it was almost like we were just on a roller coaster. There was no getting off. This was a roller coaster you could not get off of.
And there's so many different opportunities within auctioneering, whether it's estates or benefit charity auctions. Can you talk us through a little bit of that?
Yeah, and that kind of fed into my life too, because I started out doing little consignment sales, which led 1 week later into doing estate sales and then retail stores. And then shortly thereafter, I started getting the real estate business. And, it seemed like about every 5 to 10 years, I would get into another vertical. And then I got into doing industrial facilities and industrial plants. and really heavy into real estate. And really, that's the great thing about the auction industry. Depending on what you enjoy doing, what you like, if you enjoy estate sales and you enjoy all kinds of collectibles, that's a natural opportunity. And then there's a lot of opportunity in that, especially in buying and selling collectibles and antiques. And then conversely, if you are into retail businesses, there's a lot of retail businesses. They're everywhere. Consignments, that's a totally different opportunity, because with consignment auctions, you're dealing with different sellers, and lots of them. I've done auctions where, as a consignment auction, had 80 to 100 different sellers. Well, when you have 80 to 100 different sellers, eventually they're going to have an auction, just them, and it could be their whole operation. And so I think that's a really neat thing. The real estate piece is very intriguing, because I think that's the future growth. Really, the growth in the future is going to be doing all types of real estate, whether it's commercial, whether it's land, whether it's residential homes. And whenever the foreclosure market comes back, which it will, that's just the nature of the United States. About every 10 to 15 years, we have a downward turn. And those are huge opportunities to do foreclosures and bank auctions and things of that nature, which I've lived through about 3 of those. And the door gets pretty wide when you have that kind of business going on. And then we don't even know what the future is, because of the way the world is today. We don't know what the next big thing's going to be. There was a period about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, where domains were a big deal. And my partner, Craig, he traveled all over the world selling domains and bringing millions of dollars for domains. And that market has cooled down, and that's kind of gone away. But the fundraising area, the benefit fundraising auction business, I think is probably the hottest right now, because there's so many 501c3s all over the United States. There's a never-ending demand for groups that need to make money.
What do you think are the most important traits that make an auctioneer truly successful beyond just having a great chant?
I think you need to be a people person. I think someone that can have conversations, someone that is genuine, honest, believable, someone that has knowledge about product, where they can speak intelligently about whatever they are selling, someone that is just a natural person that can sit down with you and have a cup of coffee, and you feel that genuine nature. And I think that's probably the biggest. It sounds a little trite, but it's really not. You need to be a person that people trust, and because they are trusting the auctioneer with their everything they have. Whether it's their personal estate, whether it's their assets, their business assets. When you trust someone like that, that's a huge responsibility, and you want to go with an auctioneer or an auction company that has a reputation for fair dealings and honesty, because at the end of the day, it's about reputation.
And I heard from many of your instructors during training also helping to be a problem solver.
Well, that's ultimately what we are, because, whether it's an individual that just wants to liquidate a certain type of asset, maybe it could be, this sounds crazy, but, there's people that collect millions and millions of baseball cards. Well, I did all that. Autographed memorabilia, sports memorabilia, celebrity memorabilia, guitars, rock memorabilia, all types of music. There's so many collectible items related to that. And I think there's that kind of thing is very expensive. It can really add up. I'm a collector. I buy antique oil and gas signs, things from the 40s and 50s and 60s. And I think people of my generation and my age, a lot of us yearn for the past. And so we buy things that remind us of the good times back in the 60s and 70s and 50s. And so we embrace it. And then we buy all this stuff, and like collector cars, perfect example. For about the last 10 or 15 years, the big market has been the Camaros and the Mustangs and the Shelbys, because the muscle cars have been really hot. 30, 40 years ago, people were collecting Model A's and Model T's. Well, that generation is pretty much all gone. They're deceased, and that stuff, the value of the 1920s, 30s, and 40s cars has dramatically dropped compared to what it was, the growth that we had 30, 40 years ago. Now, the big growth is the the baby boomers and the next generation with the muscle cars. Now, I don't know what's going to be next because vehicles are not as collectible. You know, people aren't going to be yearning for a Tesla. So, you know, those engines just don't roar the same. So I see a big change coming in collector cars.
Is there a particular auction or professional moment that stands out for you?
There's been a few. I definitely would have to say working with the GSA, General Services Administration for the United States Government, I did the very last live auction that they did of any major consequence, and that was in the mid to late 90s. It was an $18 million auction, and it was FEMA trailers or FEMA manufactured housing. But as far as fun, I grew up going to Six Flags over Texas. That's a theme park that's in Texas, and then they have one in St. Louis and they have one in Georgia and in various locations. But I got to do their surplus that they had accumulated from the time they opened the park. So doing Six Flags over Texas, we had a lot of television network people there, a lot of stations. And then I think another one that was a real defining moment, it was back in 1982. I get to sell a town in Texas, and it was the town of Tioga, Texas, near where I grew up. And it's the birthplace of Gene Autry, the singing cowboy, and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and all that. And then 30 years later, I end up auctioning off his birthplace in Tioga, Texas. So I think that connection, because it was connected to my grandparents. He played guitar with my grandmother when they were kids, and
wow.
So we had
really cool.
Some cool history. Yeah.
You're a co-owner of the Worldwide College of Auctioneering and the owner of America's Auction Academy. What's your favorite part of that teaching experience? Back
in the early 90s and the late 80s, I had wanted to teach at auction school. And the opportunity, I went to auction school in Kansas City, and the opportunity just was never made available to me to become an instructor. And around 1992, I just decided, you know what? I knew everybody in the auction business. I was very active with the state association in Texas and also the national, and I was getting, I'd been a member since 1979. And I thought, you know what? People are always calling me saying, hey, where can I go to auction school? And I just decided to open up a school. And so when we opened up in 92, 93, that founded that school and started it from scratch and brought in some really great instructors, and it hit, and it was very successful. And so I have been running that school now for about 32 or 33 years, and that's been very enjoyable, and I've enjoyed it. It's been great. And then Paul C. Bear, who grew up here in Iowa, this school here in Iowa started in 1933 by a gentleman named Colonel Joe Reich, and Joe Reich started in 33 and ran it for many, many years. And Paul C. Bear, another auctioneer that's been a friend of mine for, I don't know, probably 35 or 40 years. He was our very first international auctioneer champion, and he had bought the school about 25 years ago. And then he and his partner, Vicki Ginder, just decided that, you know what, it's time to pass it on to somebody else. And he called me and he asked me what I thought a school was worth. And I said, well, I don't know what it's worth, but I can tell you, if you ever decide to sell it, let me know, because I might be interested. And I bought it because of its history, the legacy, and the fact that they had graduated over 40,000 auctioneers since
Impressive.
1933. Yeah, almost 100 years of it. And I thought, you know what, it's kind of cool. We got the one that we started in Texas, and we've been running it for almost 35 years. And then if we have worldwide, then that's another opportunity. And I think I just love education, and I love the fact that I've gotten to do every single thing I've really ever wanted to do in the auction industry. It's been gifted to me because we worked hard and the networks that we have. And I thought, what a great way to be in the business is to own two auction schools and influence others. And so we're closing in on probably 50,000 students that have graduated from the two schools, and who knows what's next.
The auction school experience is intense but life-changing. What kind of transformations do you see in students from day one to graduation?
I remember one particular female in Texas. She literally was scared to death. She scared herself to death. She would get up in front of the group, and she'd never been in front of a group before, and she didn't have the confidence to do anything, and she literally fainted in my arms on the first day of auction school. And then she puts in her 8 days, And at the end, she is a strong public speaker. She had self-confidence. She walked up to that microphone like she'd been doing it for 25 years. And I think that I tell people all the time, auction school, in my view, is not auction school. It's a life school. I care about the auction industry, and that is the platform that I have. But at the end of the day, it's more about what we're training. Like the people in your class, you have a lot of young people. We hope that we influence the young people to be good people, to be community-minded, to give back, to give to children's charities and other charities, just all kinds of things. We want people to be good people. That's why we open and close with a prayer, and that is a symbolic way to wrap the school up. And that tomorrow we'll see that, because we'll close everything up with a prayer and send everybody along the way, and that we just pray that everybody got what they wanted out of it.
Between Worldwide and America's Auction Academy, how do you keep the curriculum fresh and relevant with so many changes happening in the industry, with live events to online and hybrid auctions?
I think we taught the same way for many, many years. But here's the deal. This is how you need to look at things. In 1995, that was the advent of eBay. eBay changed the game. And eBay changed the game because people were selling collectible items at auctions and estate sales. These were items that were mass-produced, but they were collectible. After eBay came online and we started having these online opportunities, it pretty well killed all those markets. Whether it was Beanie Babies or of any of those collectible items, they're mass-produced. And then once it became an online feature, you could get all you wanted anytime, all day long, 24/7. There's no more collectible to it. Nobody's going to drive from Iowa to Illinois or Iowa to Ohio to sit and bid on Beanie Babies, but they would before 1995. So now you wake up, here we are in 2025, and I think the thing that's great for us is we have great instructors. So you have these great instructors who sell in different areas. So we've got, Kurt Johnson was here he was here and taught fundraising and benefit auctions. Well, he's on the cutting edge of everything happening with benefit auctions. We had Matt Moravec, who is the lead auctioneer for Mecum Collector Car Auctions, and he was here. And he's on the cutting edge of that. So when you have great instructors, they bring great knowledge that keeps everything current. Now, I will tell you this, the big change that's going to happen in 2026, and it's coming. You haven't been a part of it yet, but you're going to hear about it, and the public will hear about it. We have already pre-recorded all of our classroom classes, and we'll be rolling out a hybrid this next year. So students will be able to take half of their classes, which are all the classroom lectures. They'll be able to do that remotely, and then they will come to our locations, either in Texas or here in Iowa, to take the chant class and learn how to become an auctioneer, to actually stand up and be an auctioneer. So you'll get about 35 to 40 hours of the chant, but that's all it's going to be when they come to school. They're going to literally get an overdose of that, which I think is great, because it'll give people the opportunity to take all the pre-classes. They'll have a couple of months to take those classes, everything from bankruptcy to any of the classes, the real estate classes, and they're presented by the same instructors and some others. They'll have multiple choices of instructors. So I think that's going to be the big change, and it's technology. We spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to do this. So the game's changed. The technologies, the various auction platforms, the online platforms will be more defined. We're already presenting them, but we'll be able to present them even better in the next few years.
As someone who shaped so many auctioneers' careers, what's the single piece of advice you find yourself giving new graduates most often?
Practice. You got to practice. It's not going to come to you.
I hear that.
As much as I would love to tell everybody that every auctioneer is on the same footing, the reality is it's based on your effort. You have to work hard. It's no different than selling real estate. If you're going to sell real estate, I would say anybody can sell real estate, but you know what? It's like professional golf. Selling real estate and auctioneering are very similar in that there's 5%, maybe 6% or if you're lucky 10, that make the bulk of the money. And why? Because they work harder, they put in more hours, and they practice more, and then they also know more because they're learning while the other people are talking about being an auctioneer, and they're sitting at home or they're sitting in their office and they're not doing anything to make it better. I really think that's the number one advice that I would give anybody that comes out of auction school is you become the best student and you become the best practitioner, because that'll make the difference.
Mike, this has been such a great conversation. I've really enjoyed hearing your story. And as a student at Worldwide College of Auctioneering, it's been especially meaningful to learn from you both in the classroom and here today. Thank you for being our guest on the Growing Destinations podcast.
I certainly did enjoy it, and I enjoyed your show, and I look forward to listening to episodes myself. When I'm going down the road, I'll be listening to you.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Growing Destinations podcast. And don't forget to subscribe. This podcast is brought to you by Experience Rochester. Find out more about Rochester, Minnesota, and its growing arts and culture scene, its international culinary flavors, and award-winning craft beer by visiting experiencerochestermn.com.